Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Wellness Uncensored. My name is Dr. Patty G. I am your host here today for another live show to talk about your brain, mental wellness, health, nutrition, and all things uncensored. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about neurodiversity. Lots of things fall into that category with neurodiversity, and sometimes we think only of folks that might be autistic, may have developmental delays, but in all actuality, we can all have a bit of neurodiversity in our thinking, and sometimes those things can be positive. Sometimes those things can be motivating to get us to do different things or to reset our life, and sometimes those things can really hold us back. And it's when things hold us back that we really want to take a look and see what can we do to optimize. Couple of quick things. We've had some guests on, and last week we talked about that this month is actually National Autism Month, but the week of April 19th to the 25th, which is just going to be beginning, I guess, this Sunday, the 19th to the 25th, actually kicks off National Survivor of Crime Victims Week. And crimes are not always crimes of shootings and murders and things like that. And what we talked about last week, and what I want you all to try to tune in if you can, is to look at our website, betrayalprojectusa.org. It's a wonderful national organization, 501(c), and they have been coming together collecting people, stories, events, litigation cases that have gone actually into trial, and wanted to share a little bit about what the victims of patients that have died in hospitals during the pandemic, and still even now, there's actually still some folks that it hasn't really come to an end. So you want to tune into betrayalprojectusa.org. There's lots of information. And if you've had any type of medical, hospital, any type of an issue that you think is worthy of asking some questions, that might be the group that you could tune into and get some answers, ideas. And certainly if you're grieving the loss of a loved one, you really might not be too surprised when you see how many other people really are struggling. You can always reach out to us at Magnolia Behavioral Wellness through our website, and that is magnoliabwellness.com. And we've got all kinds of tips and tidbits and lots of great things for you to see on the website. You can also, for most of the items that I talk about for nutrition, health, and fitness, you can find them under our supplement section. You can also see some really cool blog posts as well as some stories. And I've written several books, one which really prompted this podcast after the pandemic. And so if you want to kind of get a behind the scenes look at things that happened during the pandemic, how I actually was a survivor from COVID and some of the hospital protocols that really have now, people are starting to hear about the different things, as well as vaccine injuries, all types of information. Tune in and either take a look at my website, Magnolia Bee Wellness, for holistic and psychiatric information, and Magnolia Bee Wellness is the site that I usually send people to if you're looking for supplements and health. But the betrayalprojectusa.org is a site that you can look to learn more information about things you probably didn't know went on during the pandemic, and to keep yourself prepared for things that hopefully are not yet to come, but certainly we want to be more informed as we go forward in the coming months, years, and decades. And so I think it's a great opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about just things that we didn't realize could happen. And we were a little too trusting during that time. Anyway, let's get started. So this, if you can see me on the screen, is a brain. And the brain is actually a fascinating organ, and it's often very underestimated. People come in and they often want to be fixed. I have anxiety, so I want a pill, or they want to lift their mood. And the brain, if you've heard me talk about it in prior shows, is really the master organizer. It's the motherboard of everything that your body does, physically, emotionally, your entire well-being. And if we don't feed and fuel and nourish our brain, it's not going to operate to our best potential. And so it's really important to understand how the brain works. But why today do we want to talk about things like neurodivergency? And have you all heard that word? It might be something new to some folks. It has become a buzzword in the past, I would say 4 or 5 years. And it's sort of a way to describe folks or situations or feelings that just don't seem to click, right? Or don't seem to click, and people might look, or you might feel just not natural, not comfortable, or you may just have likes and dislikes that are dissimilar from other people. And so they've kind of lumped a lot of things into neurodivergency. And so there's a lot of things in there. And what is in there is a fascinating area of the DSM-5 categories of mental illness or mental diagnosis codes related to autism, autistic features. Asperger's was a diagnosis that folks used to utilize in describing folks that didn't respond, react, or sensory awareness, motor tics, all kinds of things that just appeared different or dissimilar from a lot of what we would call the mainstream. And I think it's fascinating. I watched a documentary recently, and I'm going to share that with you. I think it's extremely important to understand that just because folks do not respond, operate, or even show a connection the way you might expect, we could kind of call that a little bit of neurodivergence. But everybody responds and learns in somewhat of a slightly different fashion. Even if you put 5 of your best friends or family members together and you all feel like they're generally in that category of what we want to call normal, if you line everybody up, we're all going to have slightly different opinions, responses, and beliefs to different things. And I would like to say that ability sometimes means that we are more visual, we're more auditory, sensory wise, we may have different senses that really help us to understand or make decisions based on, sound, sight, touch, those kinds of things. And so what's interesting is we watched a documentary called Spellers, and I thought I didn't really know what I was going to be viewing, but it really tuned me into a world that is opening doors for people that do not present much like ourselves, are generally in that category of autism. And if you have or know anyone and you haven't been exposed to this documentary, I'm hoping to get one of the gals who's done the work with many patients who are in the category of autistic. And what it is they have taught folks who are autistic to some level to use a letter board. And the letter board is the entire alphabet. It's a 3-dimensional. And so you can actually use a pen or a stick and just touch into each letter as if as a way to kind of do a Scrabble and connect the dots to spell words and letters. And it was a fascinating documentary because these are folks that oftentimes, I don't know, growing up, how old everybody is that's tuning in today, but oftentimes we would see kids in school that were in those special ed classes, or even now. There are wonderful programs out there for people who are just struggling to understand day-to-day life, optimization, how to get through life without support of someone else who's more sensory and socially aware. This documentary shows how, when teaching them how to use letters, there is a whole world of learning and there's a whole world of knowledge in many of these individuals that had not been able to communicate. And I was so fascinated by it. We actually tuned in. We did a podcast recently, this past Saturday on X. And several of the individuals that shared and presented talked about how when you can't communicate like you normally do. Do you ever struggle if you don't know a different language and someone is perhaps speaking differently a different language? How frustrating it is, or difficult, right? Because you feel incapable of helping them meet their needs. If someone is, say, Spanish speaking and trying to find how to get into a building and go up to the third floor, we almost start to overcompensate with our moves and our actions to go, this is how we go, hit the button, go up the elevator. And so there's a known language barrier. But for folks that have somewhere on that spectrum of autism, there's been little ways to understand what is really cognitively going on in their brain. And here's the biggest piece of information, if you tune into this documentary, that you will learn. Most of us think it's sensory and cognition, but it's more of a motor skill dysfunction. And so why is that so important? I think if you are out and about and you're struggling to communicate and understand, someone's walking along and they appear, we'll use the term disabled, and you don't think they understand, they actually probably understand more than you even realize. So sitting around them, they're very much aware and can hear and can process information. And so I wanted to pass that on as part of our discussion today with autism, because that documentary was fascinating. You can find it on YouTube and just look for the documentary called Spellers. It's Spellers, Spellers. And it's about the world of autism, where we bring together folks that cannot communicate verbally. And the piece that I just want you to take away, and hopefully this will provide some light and great information to folks who may be struggling with a family member or a close friend that is just having cognitive communication issues. It's a great doorway to learn how to use the alphabet, to find that world, to be able to use the letterboard and spell words, and can share amazing, amazing information that they actually have. These folks that they shared, there were different young adults, maybe from the ages of 15 up to 22. And the things that they revealed by sharing as they spelled out words and the person who helped them to use the letterboard, it was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating. And for the parents involved, it was quite just, it was just so rewarding to see how they could learn to communicate and understand what was going on inside of the mind of their child. And one example the father gave was, they thought perhaps they just taught them how to use the board to just randomly spell things, to not really have that cognitive concept. And when the dad talked about a story where they were asking about, wildlife, animals, plants, birds, things like that, and they talked about a carnivore, and they spelled out that particular word, they said, now what's opposite of a carnivore? And here I am, I'm going, well, it's plant something, but the actual word is herbivore. And the person spelled it out, and like the room just went silent, because there was cognitive development there. And so I don't want to take away from the documentary, but if you want to watch something that is just so gifted and so enlightening, and I think it's something that so many people have yet to hear and learn about. And that's, again, another thing, right? Here we are, Wellness Uncensored, how to help heal the brain and how to improve your ability to do life. And I don't think this is something that really has ever been seen in a lot of mainstream media type settings. So I think it's growing information, and it's one that I want you guys to all hear and be a part about. But let's talk about a couple other areas too. And if you have questions, there's some things that I've done some work with folks with autism, and it is truly fascinating when you really take the time to hear what they're saying or to connect with what they're physically trying to do. Because remember, what this movie will share is that it's such a motor disconnection. I mean, imagine if you had your hands kind of tied and you couldn't articulate the things that you normally wanted to articulate. And, the mouth, the whole mouth, tongue, and all that, that's a motor function. So when people have strokes, it's a motor function. And that would probably be the next closest thing that I would share, to kind of liken it to if you've ever had someone with a stroke residual symptom of, they call it dysphagia, and the inability to communicate or use part of the mouth. That's what a lot of these folks who have different levels of autistic function have. So I think it's very enlightening. But But the other part to talk about today, I wanted to talk about anybody out there struggling with just repetitive thoughts that you lose sleep at night, you lose the ability to get through the day, you get caught up during the day, you just can't get from thing to thing. You find that the repetitive motion of things that you have to do are just your thoughts, not even motion, but you'll think of 100 things you have to do and you only have 15 minutes to get out the door for work. A lot of times folks will say, I've Googled it. Google is the be all end all, master mental health directory, I think, of what our diagnoses are these days. However, it's not necessarily 100% accurate. And I say that because you could have symptoms that are more tied up with, overthinking, OCD, or intense anxiety that you're so paralyzed by inactivity or too much activity or too many things on your mind that now your anxiety increases. So the anxiety, the overthinking, what we call OCD, obsessions, compulsions, those things can really be the precursor to panic attacks or concentration issues. If you've ever struggled to get to work on time or get a project done on time, and you find that you're having a lot of trouble, maybe in the home or at work, those types of symptoms are things that can really be treated very well. And it's going to go back to the brain. And first, let's start with, are you fueling your brain? Now, I've got a few folks that I've been treating that, they eat well, they hydrate well, they exercise, they generally get good sleep. But when you peel it back, really think about, do you have deficits in those areas? And when I think about sleep, how long does it take someone to fall off to sleep? If you can go to bed and lay there and look around and think and start making lists of things you have to do the next day, how long has it taken you to really drift off? And if you find that you're looking at your clock or your watch and 20, 30 minutes has passed, you may be someone who is really overthinking. And how do we turn that brain down? There's lots of ways to work on it. I'm not suggesting we jump into medications right away, but some of the best supplements, if you're, again, optimized, hydrating, eating well, exercising, and you just can't get the brain to turn off, is using a supplement called GABA, GABA. And with the GABA supplement, GABA is actually what helps our brain go to sleep at night. So there's a lot of different supplements you can find out there. GABA in lower amounts, like 100 to 200 milligrams, can be just used as a relaxation if you're just really anxious and stressed throughout the day. But if you're struggling with sleep at night, you can use 500 to 1,000 milligrams of GABA, and the GABA will help your brain to turn off. There's also a few other supplements that kind of go along with it. You may have taken them individually, but like L-theanine and 5-HTP, those are also what we call in the neurotransmitter category. They help the brain to slow down and to relax. So they're very good as relaxing supplements, but they're really very good for sleep. Oh, we got a couple of questions. Let's see. So Johnny's asking about, do you find most people have these issues in some way? And we'll get to the sleep one next. But, that's a good question, Donnie. I think it's a balance. So I think we have to look at, are we generally optimized? And if I myself have a little bit of thinking where I'm stressed about something and I keep saying, I've got to get something done. Like today was my son's birthday and he's in a different state. And I was like, got to do something. And I've been thinking about it off and on throughout the week. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to fly there. We had just been there just about a month or so ago. He wasn't going to be able to fly here, but all during the week, I'm like, I got to do something. Well, maybe I'll send a gift. I'm not really sure. And then a couple of days got ahead of me and I said, oh my gosh, I've only got another day. And I decided to try to send him some treats and some balloons and stuff. So, that's kind of a short term. It's not paralyzing you, but it's on your mind. And things that are top of mind and on your mind are not necessarily a problem. Sometimes if you're having stress or anxiousness and you've got a test coming up or you've got a deadline for something due, if that helps you to get things done and it's not paralyzing you, I think those kinds of triggers are things that are healthy. a little anxiety, a little angst is generally a positive thing, that you can turn up the heat and get something done and stay focused to get things accomplished. It's when they become more of a barrier to getting out of bed or getting into work on time, or finding that you've got things piling up all over your desk, or your house becomes so clutterful you can't even find stuff, or where stuff is, but it's all either on the floor or it's in piles. It's when the situations become just a barrier. I think that's probably the best way to describe how those issues can become problematic. But that's generally kind of what I'm going for. If they spur you to creativity, if they spur you to get things done, if they spur you to be effective, that's not a problem. Even if you have a night or two where you're anticipating something and you're laying awake, certainly it may not be optimal, but if you're waking up ready to start the next day because you're getting ready to do a performance, you're getting ready to do something important, that's what I would call more of a healthy energy, a synergy. It's more of a problem anytime when it impairs you from moving forward, doing what you would normally want to do or desire to do. The question from Paul is, would that mean if you went to bed too soon, if you weren't totally tired? That's a really good point. And I think what we have to realize is, I have folks that struggle all the time, and they'll tell me, I have insomnia. This med doesn't work. That med doesn't work. No, I've tried a higher dose. And they don't have what I would call a very active, dynamic day. Doesn't mean they have to run. Doesn't mean they have to do, all kinds of calisthenics. Doesn't mean their day has to be jam-packed busy. But the body is meant to move. So if you have a very relaxing day and you really are not moving around, you get up around 9 or 9:30 or 10, you have something to eat, you sit and watch TV, and I'll throw a few of these things out there. Maybe play a few video games, maybe make a few phone calls, play on your phone, and then you have dinner. Not really much is going on. And then you take yourself to bed at 9:30, 10 o'clock, and you can't go to sleep. And you do this perhaps day after day after day, and there's just not a full day of things, okay? Or you get up early at 5, 6 o'clock, and you go do what you have to do, and then 10 o'clock you come in and you take a nap for about a half an hour, an hour. And then you go about the rest of your day, and then 3, 4 o'clock you sit down and you nod off again. And then you eat dinner, and maybe you go for a walk at night, and then you go to bed and you lay there. When you give the brain that much relaxation or rest, chances are you're not going to have a restful night's sleep. And it's those very folks that have either a very sedentary day, or they get up early and they get stuff done, but they come home and they take a nap or they relax, and then they do something else and then they rest. And they tell me, I have insomnia, medication's not working, I'm not sleeping at all. And then we talk about, what time did you go to bed? Well, I went to bed at 10 o'clock. I fell off to sleep, but I woke up at midnight. And then I laid awake and I fell back to sleep at 1:30. And then I woke up at 4 o'clock, and by 5 o'clock I got out of bed. Well, technically, in that disruption, there was some sleep going on. So it's not that you've been awake for 24 to 48 full hours, but it's been a very disruptive, sort of disjointed sleep. And sleep, if you don't really get a good 5, 6, 7 hours, younger folks tend to need more sleep, 8, 9, 10 hours, 11 hours. But as you get older in the scheme of things, if you get a good 5, 6 hours, that really may be all your brain requires. So if you are getting that kind of sleep at night and you're, over 50, if you did take that little rest in the morning, or you had an afternoon, or you had a more sedentary day, that just may be all you're going to get. Now, what do you do in that time that you wake up? Well, they often will tell you in several of the journals and the articles and things that I've shared, don't just lay there, get up and go do something. I kind of have mixed feelings. I think it's very individual, but sleep is one of the first things that will help you to kind of balance out our topic for today of anxiety and overthinking and OCD. So really work and look and address and identify, what does your sleep hygiene look like? And there's all kinds of things that you can do to set your evening, your bedtime for sleep. It's fresh, clean sheets. It's a cooler room temperature. Spray some aromatherapy, lavender or hibiscus. There's scents and smells that actually are very lulling to go to sleep. Even frankincense is a really nice smell that people can fall asleep on. You got to be really careful with TV and music, because if you don't have the timer set to go off about 20 to 30 minutes as you're falling asleep, that TV will wake you up. So keep that in mind. But as far as sleep, there's also a few other types of sleep aids. Magnesium is great. You want to make sure you've got magnesium glycinate. But those kinds of things are really helpful. Now, the other part, if you went to bed too soon, that's kind of true too. Like, what does your day look like? And maybe you're somebody who requires less sleep. So if you are up either later in the morning, then you're probably going to need to go to bed later. If you get up at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, you're probably not going to want to go to bed at 7 or 8. It's just, you need more wakeful hours. You need movement. But if you're up early, you want to try to make sure you get yourself in bed so that you're still getting about, like I said, somewhere between 5.5 to 9 hours sleep. It just is very individual. If you're very sedentary, keep in mind that when you are not moving, your body's at rest. So while you may think you're awake and, I'm not sleepy, it's, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If your body is like that all day, then your brain doesn't really know, am I awake? Am I asleep? It needs activity. So that's why I always stress, try to move, try to stretch. The more physically active you can be, brisk walking, morning or after dinner, working out at the gym, running, bike, treadmill, anything that's physical. There's even those vibration plates. And for folks that can't really do a lot of physical activity, those vibration plates even you can buy them. They're anywhere from, $150 to $400. And you can hold onto the handles, and you're actually going to be able to work the muscles almost as if you had a full body workout. So almost every age and ability or lack of ability level physically, we can get some physical movement. And there's also, again, love YouTube. There are exercises you can even do sitting in a chair that can be very aerobic. And if you are getting an aerobic workout or a more physical workout, you're releasing good endorphins, which is going to be great for your mood, but you're also getting the body to feel like it's in motion. And that's also equally good for you to be able to get a good restful night's sleep. Beyond sleep, when we talk about your brain and your activity and nutrition, I've had patients tell me this as well, and it's so important. If you get up and you're very busy and you're very active and you get a drink of water and you go to work and you're not having anything to eat until 2 o'clock or later in the day, what do you think happens to the brain? It malfunctions. This is where we get anxiety, we get overthinking, we get panic, we get low mood or irritability, because it's just like driving your car with about 3 miles left to get to the gas station, and you've got 10 miles to go. Your brain is going to alert you through mood, not necessarily through hunger. Why that is? The hunger sometimes is the last stage effort. When you're hungry, your brain has probably been hungry about 4 to 5 hours before you feel that hunger pain. And if I think about it, logically, when we go to sleep for 7 or 8 hours, that's really our time of, space to let everything kind of be sedentary and digest. It's where sometimes people, when they say that they're going to go on a fast, we fast when we sleep. If you want to extend that fast, there's definitely some nutritional benefits people will talk about, and things maybe on another show we'll share about fasting. It can be healthy to let the body process, digest, and relax. But if your brain woke you up every time it was empty and let you think you're hungry, you might not have a good night's sleep. So the brain will let you know through mood and behavior. And so if you're finding you're a little jittery, you're a little shaky, you're a little anxious, you're a little tense, or you start to get like quiet or sad, make sure that you're fueling your body. Now, the best things to fuel your body, we talk about this a lot too, is things that are lean and clean. So if you're trying to be effective during the day, I've got one person recently who said, well, and they're very successful. And then when we dug down into what they actually eat, they'll get up at 4 or 5 a.m. and they really won't eat literally until well after 3 p.m., sometimes 7 p.m. at night. To them, that angst and that hunger and that emotion is what drives them to feel like they're being successful. But hence, that's when they came to me and they're like, I can't get my house clean. I can't focus. I can't stay organized. I'm even late to work. And that's when we kind of put it all together. It starts with how you fuel your brain. Now, say you're eating well, you're sleeping well, and let's even say you're moving. You're moving well, you're exercising. Sometimes these thoughts are really hard to calm down and control, the overthinking, the repetitive thinking. And that's where we do different behavioral skills. And some of the behavioral skills that we work on is, what are your stressors? Let's try to find ways to use a behavioral approach through different techniques. We talk about the vagus nerve. We talk about journaling. If you're finding that you're becoming overburdened or overridden with the inability to move forward in one of your activities or more throughout the day, start tracking what is going on in your life with a journal. And people often struggle with, well, I don't have time. Well, if you want to get to the root, right, it's a process of investigation. And I think a lot of times, how many of us are so quick to say, yeah, this is wrong, that's wrong, I don't know, I'm going to have to go see, somebody to help me out. You can, but we're going to sit there and we're going to break it down for you. So to help yourself, get a journal. And, there's fantastic journals. I have to give, Amazon, anywhere you go, Target, there's a lot of places. They've already got journals with things kind of pre-written in. It makes it really quick and easy to just start using some of the boxes to check off things. How did my day go today? What things do I have to get done today? What did I forget? What do I have to remember to do tomorrow? Was my day stressful? What went well today, right? So you get a little gratitude in there. But if you keep track, just do it for 10 to 14 days. Now, we all think we remember everything. But when you flip through the pages and you look back, you can go, actually, Tuesday and Wednesday are my most stressful days. Tuesday and Wednesday are my busiest days. Monday and Tuesday night, I don't sleep very well. And then you can kind of track back from there and say, well, maybe it's because I'm worried about the day, Tuesday and Wednesday. And then that's where you can look at, is there something I can move in my schedule? Do I have too much packed in one day? So use a journal as a way to break it down. The other thing you can do is to also look at, how do I relax when I get stressed, when I start overthinking? What happens next? How many of you, I'm sure some of you can probably attest, you go into a panic mode and maybe you start hyperventilating, you start sweating, you start feeling like you're going to pass out because for whatever reason, all of these emotions and thoughts come to mind about, oh my gosh, it's 3 o'clock and I have to do this. I have to stop here. I have to pick somebody up. All these thoughts rush through your mind, and that's kind of like a panic mode. So be aware what's happening. First thing you want to do, we always go back to, the CPR training, airway, breathing, circulation. So start taking some breaths, slow, deep breaths. Turn on some music. Maybe you're in the car and you're in traffic. You are not going to get where you need to get to. So instead of being in a panic, breathe. Maybe start singing some of the songs that are on the radio. That's actually a stimulant to calm the vagus nerve. So between the breathing and just centering yourself around where you are at the moment, let your thoughts compress. Don't continue to go, oh my gosh, what am I going to do kind of thing. So you journal, we work the vagus nerve, we breathe, we hum, we sing. I've taught folks before too, tapping is one of the mechanisms that helps to reset your sympathetic nervous system. We often try to teach people to tap over the heart, and you just tap and breathe, and you calm and you slow your breathing down. And a combination of physical movement, like tapping your head and patting your belly, it's a way to reset. These are also activities that we teach people to do, especially when they're in a state of panic or trauma or difficult and challenging situations of coming through a traumatic situation. We'll talk more about that in a different episode. But Justin's got a question too. What if it turns the brain off too much, or if it turns off at the wrong time? I'm not sure what turns off the brain, like using a GABA supplement or using something that's helpful to get you to go to sleep. We'll have to come back to that. And then what is a good morning carb to start your day with? I hate to say I'm not a big carb fan, although you could have a banana. Fruits, bananas, they're quick, they're fast, they're energy. But too much of them tends to, convert over to just stored fats. So I generally tell people to do a very light protein. Protein bars are kind of heavy for some people, but protein drinks, there are so many of them out there now. I would say 5, 6, 10 years ago, when people heard protein drinks, they're like, oh, they're heavy, they're chunky, they're chalky. The pre-made ones didn't taste good. If you haven't investigated and looked into some of the lighter, cleaner proteins, I just grabbed one yesterday at our store here in Florida, Publix, and it was one of the best, lighter, cleaner proteins, and it didn't even have whey or any milk in it. It was a milk-free protein drink. It was really good. And then there's also some really good protein drinks. My favorite store is NutriShop. It's NutriShop. I might even have those folks on, I think, for a subsequent show, because I really like the way their products are created. And generally, you can mix them up in water. You don't have to have a blender. That's the other thing. If it's not quick, fast, easy, and convenient, how many of you are going to stick to it? I have learned probably the last 6 or 7 years, I pretty much travel everywhere in my day-to-day work and, in my work setting around home or when I go to the offices. I am bringing a really cute cooler of protein drink, branched chain amino acids, my vitamins that I take throughout the day, protein bars, and a couple of other healthy snacks or stuff for lunch if I don't particularly, order out that day. But I always have a toolkit of, protein type snacks and drinks or branched chain amino acids, because when you are on the go, what's the first thing that you're going to grab? A bag of chips, a candy bar, fast food, get in the line. You're going to go to Wendy's, you might go to Chipotle, you might go somewhere. And all of these foods are heavier than really what we need. And they do taste really good. Some of them, I have to say, I hadn't had Taco Bell for, I don't know, probably 6 months or more. And I went and got Taco Bell one night last week, and it tasted so good. And then it just sat there. And I had enjoyed it. So, it was a meal done and gone. But I couldn't imagine doing that every day. It really clouds your mind when you have those heavy processed foods that are loaded with chemicals and fillers. They're just not the best to optimize your brain. So keep that in mind. But for morning stuff, I would definitely say, you could have a mix of fruit. You could have yogurt. Some people like oatmeal, but I do find a lot of people tell me, and, I used to do oatmeal, but oatmeal's a little heavy. But if you like it, that's not a bad one to have. But you got to get a little something in the tank. And so I always push to do something that's liquidy, because people tolerate it better. And especially if you're taking some vitamins, those B complex are great for anxiety. If you find that you get stressed, tense, and anxious during the morning, the B complex is great, but it is also going to probably make you feel a little nauseated. And so you can offset that by drinking your B complex with a protein drink or some branched chain aminos. I'm going to guess what Justin was referring to, if you turn the brain off or if you turn it off at the wrong time, that would tell me that your sleep-wake cycle is just out of sync, meaning you might be laying around or sleeping or trying to go to sleep for too many hours at a time. Or if you cannot sleep, and there's something sort of organic or chemically going on, and you're just finding that you cannot shut your brain off and you're laying there awake and there's really no reason. You kind of have to go with it, and maybe you just require less sleep. But don't forget, look at what you're putting in your body before you try to go to sleep. If you had a late night snack or a meal, it's generally a little harder to get into a good sound sleep, or you may toss and turn because it feels fairly uncomfortable. You've got a full stomach, a full belly. And if you do go to bed and go to sleep, you probably will have some crazy dreams, maybe even nightmares, if you've got food in your belly, because your body's digesting, it's releasing secretions and hormones. It just offsets that REM sleep. And some of the dreams might be pretty exciting, but you cannot predict what you're going to dream about generally. So I'll leave that for you there. But again, it's the importance of knowing how much movement your body requires too. Because I think sometimes folks also get a little worried when I say, well, you've got to move every day. Everybody's at a different level, a different pace, but you do need to try to keep your body stretched and balanced. And when you stretch, I mean, just do it if you're sitting and you're not driving, stretch and reach your arms overhead and kind of go side to side. Do you feel a little release? Like I always feel a little rush. First of all, you get the blood moving because the blood's now trying to respond, because when you move, that's going to get your heart pumping. It shouldn't send you into a full-blown sweat, but when you move, your body's stimulated. When you stimulate the body, your body has actionable mechanical responses, and those responses you want to have. How many of you sit at a desk or drive all day? It gets monotonous, you get tight, you get fatigued, you get tired. When you get up, you get out of the car, you get up out of your chair, don't you feel a little release? Well, that's why you need to move your body. And this is all so important to why we're here today. Your mental health, your brain. When I was little, they had that commercial about the egg in the frying pan, and it's your brain, and then they crack the egg and it starts to bubble up to be fried. And it says, this is your brain on drugs. And so you see the egg, right? Well, if you take your brain and you drop it in a bad situation and you don't nurture it, what's going to happen to your brain? It's going to short circuit. It's going to not work for you. It's going to give you things like stress, panic, worry, thinking. And generally, we can handle some of these things just by doing some of the things I've shared. Now, when it's not handled and when you are out of ideas and resources from some of the stuff I've shared, you need to get somebody to kind of help you along. And it could be maybe there's something that has happened in your life. Maybe there's triggers. And that kind of takes us into the world of psychiatry. And psychiatry is a place where people are trained, between psychiatry, therapy. We can help you through after you get yourself squared away with nutrition, sleep, and activity. That's the foundation, because it's just like your car. Do you ever take it in for a tune-up? When you know you've got enough gas in the tank, your oil filter is checked and your oil level is right, and you've got enough window washer in your car. That's a private joke for my husband, because I was without window washer fluid for about 2 weeks. And it got so bad, I'm like, I've got to get washer fluid in. And we put some in last night. But that's the thing. If I took care of my brain the way I take care of my car sometimes, man, I would be out of gas. I'd be out of window washer fluid. My tires would probably be bald. Oil changes, because I don't take care of my car the way I take care of my brain. Now, many of you probably take care of your car better than you take care of your brain and your mental health. And that's why it's so important that you really do an investigation on you and start writing down some things in a journal, so you can start saying, hey, let me look back these last couple of days. Let me look back. What is it? Now, you may not need to write down if, there's some genuinely difficult things going on in your life. And that's also an acute situation. And for acute situations, those are handled a little bit more aggressively. And I say that because if you had a loss of a loved one or a pet, or, your car's out of commission, you don't know how you're going to get to work. Maybe your job's in jeopardy and you're like, what am I going to do? Or you're in a bad situation at work or home and you need to make a change. Okay, that's when we've got to get the resources and we've got to get fueled and refueled. And this is why you need to fuel your body. You need to try to get yourself some good rest. And if you can't take control of the situation, right? Because anybody who's been tuning in, what I tell y'all. And of course, this is for you to answer, because I know you can't jump on here. But what are the things you can control? Really, you yourself and the actions that you take. Beyond that, mostly everything else in your day and your life is not really in your full control. Things come into play. So if you can control what you put in your body, start hydrating. Start getting some little bits of protein. If you are in a crisis situation, the best thing you can do for yourself is just stay calm, fuel, hydrate, try to get rest when and where you can, even if it's in little bits. Write down some of your stressors so you can take it from your brain to a piece of paper. That really does help. And then reach out to a therapist. There's lots of great websites out there. We can put you in touch with folks across the country that can help you. Mental wellness is critical. It's equally, if not more important than your physical condition. And I say that because many people can work and survive overcoming physical limitations. But if you don't have your mental wellness, your mental health, you're really at a loss, at a crossroads. And for today, I really wanted to get into that idea of understanding it's okay to not be the same as anybody else. I encourage you all to take a look at that documentary, Spellers. It definitely brought some tears to my eyes, and I want you to be aware of how people respond, think, and act maybe differently from you. But it's not that they're not intelligent. It's not that they don't have things going on. And what a beautiful way to connect when you're able to learn a different language. We've got sign language. Sign language is a great motor way to coordinate when you can't physically speak. But people that speak in sign, they're not cognitively deficit. It's a physical deficit of hearing, which is sensory, but it's more of a physical hearing issue. But they're smart. So we have sign language, but now with autism, we can use a spelling mechanism and we can learn and hear and communicate with folks that are on that autism spectrum, which I think is just phenomenal. So I want you all to take a look at that if you can. It's on YouTube and the documentary is called Spellers. Please make sure you tune in to betrayalprojectusa.org. There is so much information on that website. You will be not only amazed, but hopefully it will help you or someone that you know that is just struggling with trying to understand something that may have happened to a loved one in a hospital, and to get involved if you want to learn and do more about it. There was a couple quick questions. Does peanut butter count as protein? Absolutely. Protein, I would say for peanut butter, try to have it on like a celery stick or a carrot, unless you're not worried about starches and carbohydrates, because if you have peanut butter sandwiches, the bread can still add some weight to you, but protein is fantastic by peanut butter. And then the last question, I guess, you mentioned things that could shut off your brain. What happens if it shut off your brain at the wrong times instead of when you want to calm you down? The only thing I can tell you about shutting it down at wrong times is you have to work on learning you. So if you know something is not working correctly, start with jotting down the times when it doesn't seem to be working for you, and then go back to the first couple of things we talked about. Are you getting enough rest? Are you able to get enough hydration and nutrition and protein? And if any one of those areas is deficient, as you fix those three areas, maybe you're having more success with not having your brain turn off when you don't want it to. There's lots of great supplements. We'll talk about that probably in another show, but instead of saying if your brain's not functioning and it's shutting down, there's things like rhodiola, American ginseng. There's a great supplement I love, lithium orotate. Talked about that in other shows. It's not the medicine, but lithium orotate, American ginseng. There's a couple of other really natural organic ways to kind of get some cognitive focus in. So we'll talk about that in coming shows. But I just want to make sure you guys just understand it's okay to find that you have mental concepts that aren't working well for you. We have to learn how to reset them. And so if you reset them by writing down what your challenges are, focusing on some better nutrition, focusing on getting a better sleep-wake cycle, and focus on physical movement, you're going to start to identify what really works for you to keep your brain sharp and in tune. And we'll have lots more for you guys next week, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew. April 19th to the 25th, National Victims Awareness Month. It was put in place by President Reagan many, many years ago, and it's to recognize those who have passed or died, the surviving family members, to honor and recognize people who have died in tragedy. And so that's what we want to recognize with all of our fallen folks. And there's many of them. So I want to thank everybody who's here. Lots of great questions. We're here every Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern. And if you do have questions, you can always reach out to us at Magnolia, the letter B, wellness.com. And our number, it's behind me. It's 904-377-1196. You can text us questions. We can help you here and across the country to help you with if you need a provider or a therapist, wherever you might be. But take care of your brain. It will serve you well. And good mental wellness and health to all of you. Have a wonderful rest of your week and a great weekend. Talk to y'all soon.